What if building a granny flat didn't make you as much as you thought it actually would? Hi, I'm Jared Krause.
And I'm Sam Powell, and we are the hosts of Property Pals Australia podcast. There's a few P's in that one.
Yeah.
And in this episode, we are going to be talking about granny flats and the pros and cons of them all. And I also share some interesting stories. There's capital gains tax events that may or may not be occurred. So it's really important for people to, as I said in the pod, is the questions that you're going to get from this to go and ask those professionals are really key for your success if you are going down this granny flat path. So hopefully get some good nuggets out of it.
Yeah, and you discuss and share a formula on how to understand what capital gains tax you would actually need to pay, which I talk about how important it is to understand that when you're doing your feasibility study and doing your due diligence. We also talk about the cost of building a granny flat. We also talk about the income you could possibly build. We also then move into like different alternatives on what you could do instead of just having a granny flat. There's so much in there.
The opportunity cost, and also understanding the granny flat play it's definitely a strategy in the investment space, but also in the principal place of residence. It's really important for those that are considering putting a granny flat on their property. And we also talk about some strategies that might allow you to avoid those capital gains tax events, which is a good little bit of sugar on top at the end of the episode.
Yeah, for sure. We brought this to the podcast because you got a question from a friend, a listener, and it's really, really important to understand that during these times where people are wanting to increase their income, there are positives and negatives, and that's what this episode's all about. So I'm sure you're going to get so much value. Before we dive in, this is not the only way that we can help you for free. Check out our How to Maximize Your Borrowing Capacity mini course at propertypals.au/resources. Now let's dive in. Welcome to Property Pals, the podcast where we share everything around how to build a property portfolio, from researching areas, financing, structuring, buying, selling, and reinvesting to live a life of financial independence. As a disclaimer, any information shared by myself, Jared, Sam, and the Property Pals team is strictly general and should not be taken as constituting professional advice. You should consider seeking independent legal, financial, and taxation advice from a qualified professional. All right, we are on. So today, I rocked up. Should I give a bit of a
backstory?
Backstory. I rocked up today at the Sam studio, and I said, "What are we going to talk about?" And he said, "Granny flats," and I thought it was a joke, but it's definitely not a joke because a friend came around last night. I think. Tell us why we're talking about granny flats.
Yeah, listener question about granny flats, and they were just asking me. I've got They live in a property that it's about an acre. So
this is a friend that came over as well.
Yeah. Just because
you have friends.
Yeah, I'm a social butterfly. well, it's Kayla's friend actually.
So you don't have friends.
Don't have friends.
No, you got way more friends than Kayla.
Oh, I used to, and then I don't know, just kids,
life, and evolution,
and life. But yeah, that's another topical one. My father tells me that you'll have 5 good friends at the end of it. And at the start, when he told me when I was like 19, I was like, go away. I've got like 50 friends. How can someone have only 5?
Yeah.
And then the older I get, obviously people digress into their own niches, like whether it's career or family orientated. And I'm definitely finding it's like, oh yeah, it's starting to make a bit more sense. Kez?
I also find that I have decreased my friendship circle as well. We did. Like, I remember when one time we went on a trip overseas and there was like 20 of us. And, to get a group of 20 together now to do a trip overseas is definitely different at our age. But I do notice that I get more fulfillment from a few friends with the time that we catch up versus like my outside circle friends. It's like not as deep connection. And we were talking about our friendship the other day with my sister. We should actually. It's weird.
Were you talking about me? What were you saying?
Yeah, I was talking about you. I think we've talked about this on the pod heaps. We've been friends for more than 20 years, and
bro, we're out of school.
Yeah,
20 years.
Yeah, next year.
We're talking about that
next year. Yeah,
still sticks with me. I feel a lot older.
Yeah, and it's something I don't know how it is, but it's a weird phenomenon with the school that we went to. Your sister is friends with my sister, and they're a year up. Well, they were two grades above us, and they're still catch up, right? Like they're all going to Bali this year at the end of the year. Is that right?
Cool.
You don't know?
I've got to talk to my sister more.
Yeah. But
I do talk to her, just not about like, oh, where are you going on holiday? I'm really interested.
But they all catch up every Christmas, and they all always have catch ups, right? Now they went to our school, and then it was a grade below us that are all still friends, and then we're all still friends. My brother's grade below us are all still friends, and then even like back to Justin Lovey's sister's grade, who's 2 years below us, they're all still friends. But there's so many people in my life that think like it's just, and we talked about this at dinner the other night with our mates. It's so weird that from our school, we've got friendships that have lasted 20 plus years when
it's not common.
It's not a common thing. So I don't know how we got to friendships, but anyway, you've got
Granny
friends,
flats.
which is cool. And you started talking about granny flats.
Yeah, and Shaylee was just talking about we've got our land, and we want to obviously increase our income because we understand that if we can look to replace our income, it gets us closer to that, I guess, the goal of financial independence. And I'm not sure if it was you that sent me that, the ultimate goal is financial freedom comes through cash flow. Is that?
No, I didn't send it to you.
Anyway, well, it sort of resonated, very topical. But yeah, a lot of people running around there, they're trying to say, I need to get to $2 million because then I can live off $2 million for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And for me, I've never thought that way. I've always thought, well, what is the annual income I need to achieve to give me that,
Yeah. So there's a whole movement called FIRE. Do you know much about FIRE?
Yeah, was it?
Financial. It stands for Financial Independent Retire Early. And it came about after, I guess, we started trying to achieve financial independence and retire early. A couple of years after, and I went down my route and you went down your route. And it's pretty big now. There's a lot of podcasts. I listen to some podcasts around FIRE, and I've been on a bunch. And their methodology, just for people listening, is that they want to save as much money as they possibly can, live quite tight until they save that nest egg, what they call a nest egg, and it's $1 million for one person, so maybe $2 million for a couple, collectively, and they live very frugally until they get to that point, and then they can have their money invested in something that can provide a 4% return. On $1 million, it's 40 grand a year living expenses. 2 million, that's 80 grand a year. But 4%, and it could be more depending on what you're investing in, but they want it to be in a pretty safe investment.
Yeah, 4% is pretty safe.
Pretty safe, yeah. So
very safe.
Yeah, it's conservative.
I'm conservative
in this environment where we're at right now. Anyway, in the next 3 or 4 years. Yeah. So,
well, I can punch holes. We should do an episode of that. I can punch holes through that.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I'm not about being. Well, we used to be super frugal. All of our friends and family called us tight asses.
Yeah.
Still do. Think we're still tight, and sometimes we are for things, and I'm cool with that.
There's an Indian friend of mine. We talk about like being savvy around your money. Savvy's not the right word. It's like thrifty.
Yeah,
would be the word. Yeah. And it's like I'm more than happy to pay money for things if it's providing good value. But as an example, if I can look at Drew, business partner Drew, he's got these shoes that look like Converses.
Yeah.
But they're like, I don't know, if you're in Sydney, you might know that there's a brand. It's escaping my head, but they look worn. And I'm like, mate, they're pretty cool Converse. Like thinking it's like $200, and they were like, I think they're like $1,000 for these shoes that look like other shoes, and I'm like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But to him it did. So hopefully they've lasted 5 times as longer.
Or they've made him feel so good that it's helped him make another $1,000.
Yeah. Well, God, we're going to
The Psychology of Money.
Yeah, good book. Once again, we talked about
Yeah.
that last week. Read that one.
So granny flats.
Yeah. So I thought it'd be timely because a lot of people do come to me, and thanks for not turning this podcast off if you wanted to learn about granny
still
flats.
listening.
We're going into the meat and potatoes now. So a lot of people do come and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna granny flats. You can build this thing for 70 grand," and they range from I've seen $40,000 to about 220.
Yeah. So their initial goal to put a granny flat on a property is obviously more money, financial repayment, fire sort of thing, right?
Yeah, because if you look at it, if it generates let's do some quick maths on here, $300 a week from a rental, that's over a year, $15,000 a year. If it's $30,000 in investment for a cheapie, that's 22% return on investment. That's not a bad
per year.
Per year,
yeah.
So it pays, based on those figures, it pays itself off between 4 and 5 years.
Okay.
And then it's just cash flow from there.
Cool. Well, that's kind of, if you're going to hold the property for 5 years, and you don't need to decrease your rent for the other one.
Well, your rent's probably increased as well over that 5-year time because rents do increase.
True.
It's really timely in this point of the Australian property market because we're in a massive rental supply shortage.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I'm so bullish on growth in the next couple of years. But that's a lot of people are going to that. In cost of living has gone through the roof. We've got this land that we own that there's you see people doing it and they're going, oh, they're actually getting money out of it. So their first mind goes to, oh, well, that's if you've got spare cash and looking to invest it, as we talked about, a 4% return. Some people are doing that. Fire, well done. This granny flat's giving you 22%. So
I do want to put a caveat on that. Actually, I just thought about financing. If you are using financing for the build, even if you're, so one example using financing, one example is cash. If you already got 70 grand cash, cool, it's 22%. But if you're going to go away and get financing for it independently for just that asset, then you're going to have to add that financing interest on. But then also, if you think, oh no, I've got cash because I've got equity in my property, and you take that 70 grand equity out, then that's using finance as well. So you need to consider that, and it might knock that percentage down to 18% or something like that. But I mean, that'll push it. I'm just throwing numbers out there. Don't quote me. I haven't done the maths, but it could push it out to like a 7 year getting your money back.
On a 6.5% interest, that's $4,550 a year.
Yeah.
So if you take that interest out there, and what was it, 22 grand? So you're sort of 17.5 grand.
I'm a genius.
Yeah, good, but it's a good point to think about because a lot of people do. They use the bank's money, fully understand it.
Why wouldn't you? I think it's a good idea.
Let's get deeper into
we're not financial experts, but
general advice only. But it is because it's just go and talk to your accountant about this every step of the way because they'll give you that more professional, profound advice.
Yeah.
But there's things that I just wanted to sort of bring to people's attention through this too.
So these are the risks or things to consider that people may not be thinking about. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, what's that quote that you say about good questions?
The quality of your questions determine the quality of your life.
Yes.
Or the quality of your outcomes. Yeah.
So it's well, how do you know what questions to ask? And this is the questions I'm giving you to ask. So,
I like it.
Do what you want with that. But
good setup.
The whole, I guess, grey area is around so Shaylee example, principal place of residence, fantastic. There's no capital gains tax on principal place of residence. Thank you, government. It's nice to get a bit of a tick on that one.
Yeah.
But the issue is if you're generating an income out of this granny flat, then you're you're inviting a capital gains tax event potentially into your life on the sale of that principal place of residence in the future. It's a bit of a mouthful.
Okay, so I understand that. Listen back, reverse back 15, 20, 30 seconds if you want to get that. But I'm on board with you there, Sam. And so would that be because it changes the asset type to not be a principal place of residence for you anymore because you're turning that property into an investment? Or would is it possible to just claim one granny flat as an investment and still claim the PPOR as your primary place of residence?
Oh, well,
the main dwelling.
there's a calculation, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to understand this, and we'll talk about some maybe different ways to get around it, so you can get best of both worlds. So drop that little carrot there for you to keep on listening. Please keep on listening. So the formula around that is look, if you've got this property that you've owned it, so the ATO give you a formula, and it's the capital gain. So you bought this property.
Are we talking about just the primary
Yeah,
place residence?
you bought your. I'll do the example.
Yes,
And
full example.
I'm rubbish at these examples. That's why Jared's here to ask better questions. So bear with me. So you buy a house for $500,000, and then it increases over a 10-year period to $1 million.
Yeah,
there's a capital gain there of $500,000.
Yeah,
as a principal place of residence, you don't have to pay any tax on that.
On that $500K because of the gain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
If it was an investment property, then you would pay a
50%.
Well, you pay the capital gain on that, but you hold it for over 1 year, so you get a 50% discount. So in reality, if you had an investment that went up,
also if you lived in it for a year,
no, as long as you hold an investment for over 12 months,
yep,
the government then give you a capital gains tax exemption of up to 50%.
Okay, cool.
So if you, in this example, buy a $500,000 property, goes to $1 million. If it goes to $1 million in 11 months, I don't know, it could be possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know. Then you're paying like the 50% of that gain as tax. That's $250,000. So that's like, why? That's insane.
It's insane.
And don't sell it in 11 months. Wait till you get over 12 months, because then, general advice, talk to your accountant. But then your capital gains tax, you'll get the discount. So instead of paying $250 after say 13 months instead of 11 months, you're paying $125.
Cool.
So that's like
that will be the same if if 500K property went to 10 years, you sold it after 10 years is worth $1 million, you'd be your 500K capital gain, decrease that by 50%.
Yeah,
then it'd be 250.
It'll be 125 as an investment.
Oh, so as an investment.
Yeah. So anything after that 1 year, it's the same. So you get that.
So if capital gains tax is 50% of the gain, and then you can also get another exemption of 50% as well. Just to clarify for you guys, because that could be confusing.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, jump on the ATO website and have a bit of a look around. Just search capital gains tax exemptions for investment properties if you are going down that path. But for principal place of residence, this is why there's strategies around building equity in your own home, because you can do that, sell it, and you don't have to pay any capital gains tax, and you don't need to achieve a higher growth rate because you're not paying that $125,000 in tax on the back end. And that's like the flipping strategy can be risky for those people, is that they can do their figures and they're saying, all right, well, that house on the street sold for, $1.2 million. I can do this. There's about $200,000 in fat in profit there after all expenses. But then it's like, well, it's actually $100,000 in profit if you're doing it within that 12-month period, because you've got to pay 50% tax on that $200,000. And then you sort of start, I always look at opportunity cost and go, well, what else could you actually be doing to make that $100,000 with that level of effort of doing a full renovation on a house?
Yeah.
And there's also risks in that the market could turn over that period, or what you're planning is not really, you might think it's going to go for 1.2 million, but the market actually tells you on sale day it's gone for 1.1. Anyway, that's sort of a little bit of understanding around capital gains tax. But
so my question is that for the setup, like understanding capital gains tax, why is that important to note with this granny flat situation?
Because the granny flat becomes an investment, and you're generating income out of that, and therefore that portion of that granny flat, the living area, is then added to. As an example, if you've got a granny flat that's 1/5 the size of your main residence, then the capital gains when you go to sell the property in the future, you'll be paying 1/5 of that capital gain will be a taxable event. So to give you a calculation,
great, please do.
It's capital gain multiplied by the years that granny flat's been rented, divided by the years the property's been owned, by the whole property, multiplied by like the area not considered for the principal place of residence. So as a calculation, say this property's gone up $500,000 in value
in 10 years. The main property?
Yeah.
Yeah, the primary property's gone up in $500,000 in 10 years.
Yep, and you've...
so it went from $500K to $1 million.
Yep, you've rented that. So you've got $500K in capital gain,
yep,
but it's your principal place of residence. So a lot of people are thinking, okay, cool. Well, I don't have to pay tax. I got $500,000. You know, I can sell this property for $1 million. I can now use.
Okay.
I've got debt on this now at $200,000, so I've got $800,000 in cash to go and buy another property.
Yeah, but technically, if that from that $500K, 50% of that is a capital gain. It's $250, and then you're going to get a 50% discount on that, which is $125. Is that right?
No. Well, the mindset of the principal place of residence people are, well, I don't pay capital gains tax. But if you're adding
because what the other example was that's an investment.
Yeah, this is
got you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good clarification.
Yep.
So if you add that granny flat on and you're renting that out, that portion is actually triggers a capital gains tax event in the eyes of the government, apparently. So to give you a better calculation is it's gone up $500,000 over, like you've owned it for 10 years. Of 5 of those years, say you've been renting out that granny flat. So the calculation is $500,000 multiplied by the years that you've rented it and divide that by the years that you've owned it. And then if you're, like say in this instance, that the area of that granny flat is 1/5 of the total living area of all, like the main residence.
Primary residence, yeah.
Then you multiply it by that 1/5. So in that example, you'd be looking at about $50,000 in capital gains tax. But because you've held it for over those 12 months, you also get that 50% discount. But that's still $25,000 in my eyes, which people aren't really understanding how this calculation can work. So that's why I always push people to talk to their accountants to understand this further before going. And, you know, like you got to understand what you're doing as a full picture before you do it. Otherwise, you'll get caught with your pants down, because you might go and sell your property, buy another principal place residence, you know, and fully leverage yourself out. And then, you know, after tax time comes, the government come out and go, oh, you owe us $25,000. And you're like, what for? So, yeah. And also, if you're generating income out of the granny flat during that period, you know, it's triggered against your income for that year as well. So it's going to increase your tax bracket potentially.
Increase your taxable income, which may actually put you into a larger percentage.
Or like you're going to pay tax on it anyway. So if you're in that bracket of 30%, then you know your $300 a week is, you know, you've got to pay. What's that? $90 essentially on a 30% rate as an income tax, hypothetically.
Before we continue today's pod, I want to ask you a few questions. What is your property investment goal? What type of properties do you want to own? How many? What size valuation property portfolio do you want to own? And how much net income do you want to be earning? Essentially, what's your magic number in passive income that you want to be earning? And do you know how to get there? And if you do you know how to get there in the least time possible with the least amount of risk?
Sam and I have been helping people invest in property and build property portfolios for years. People who are now replacing their income through property, and we want to help you do the same. Right now, for a limited time, we are offering free property coaching to our listeners. We won't be able to do this forever, of course, so head to propertypals.au/coaching. That's propertypals.au/coaching to see how we can help you achieve your investment property goals. Link will be in the description too.
So, few figures.
Yeah, a fair few figures. That last one was pretty tricky, right? So you've got your primary place of residence. I think it's worth just going through it again. That last one, where you've got how long you've owned the property for, and then how long you've rented it out for before you sell it, right? Or how long have you owned the whole property with just the PPOR, and then how long you've had the granny flat and how long you've rented that granny flat out for. So on a $500K property, just the property before the granny flat, then after, say you own that for 5 years and you go, cool, let's put this granny flat on. And then you hold the granny flat and everything for another 5 years. So it's 5 years of the main property, 5 years with the granny flat, 10 years combined. and then what's the calculation you do there?
So if the main residence is 200 square meters of living area,
Yes.
and you're adding a 50 square meter granny flat,
So it's 1/5 of the size. The granny flat is 1/5 of the size
of the total living area.
Mhm.
So now the total living area on the property is 250 because you've had the 200 main plus a 50 granny. Therefore, the granny encompasses 1/5 of the living area of that improvement.
Yeah.
Some people on big lots of land, it's hard to understand because they're like, well, it's only taking up 1/20th of land, but they do the calculations based off living area.
Yes.
From what I can understand, anyway. And this is why we say it's all general, because it's just, I'm not an accountant, so seek that.
And these calculations may change slightly with different states and at different times of legislation.
Yeah, they're always changing that. It's a good point. Yeah, that's sort of like understanding that side of things is important for you to get your head around before pulling that trigger. And it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, like, you're paying tax because your property's gone up. You can generate that income to help you with the cash flow over that time. It's definitely a strategy that people can stomach. $500,000 in 10 years is a nice thing to have, and it's, I guess, to each their own. I always look at opportunity cost as well and go, well, what can you do with that money? But there's certain other implications. Just going to go the cons of it.
Let's go through the more cons.
So I was having this chat last night, and I was basically just saying, look, you can do you can rent it out to your family or privately, or if in that instance, then you don't have a formal agreement in place
because you have to claim that as an income.
Yeah, there's non-taxable events and taxable events in the eyes. So you don't, if you're Airbnb this as an example, you're going to have a taxable event. If you've got a lease on it, it's going to be a taxable event. If you're running a business out of it, there could be a taxable event. So the good thing is, from a business perspective, is if it's a 15-year period, if you're in that, say granny flat or that shed for 15 years, there's an exemption where you actually don't have to pay that. There's once again, as Jared said, there's always changing. The rulings are always different. So once again, check in with your accountant if you are interested in something like that. But like, my biggest risk factor is if you're renting that out. This is what I was talking to Shaylee about. It's like, if you're renting that out to, say someone like a friend, and something were to happen, are you insured for that person to be in that premises? From an insurance perspective, you can insure your granny flats. They are generally covered under the policy. You just need to let them know there's a granny flat there, but you won't be insured to rent it out. So if you were renting it out illegally, put it that way, and someone tripped over in your granny flat and smacked their head and then potentially was concussed or worse, and they could sue you, and you don't have any insurance cover. No one will protect you because you've done it, not via a formal agreement in place.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So the risk is then you've got to fork out that extra cash to settle that, which sucks. But there's obviously always risks. The chance of that happening extremely low.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
we hope anyway.
People jump in front of cars to get insurance payouts. So
mostly in America.
So yeah, you can then, if that's the case, if you want to do it fully legit, obviously get your building approval, which will get the granny flat done. You enhance your policy to include that granny flat, the improvements, and then get some landlord insurance to cover that small portion of the granny flat. It's only probably a couple $100 a year to do that. Then you're fully covered, but also understand that there's going to be a capital gains tax event when you choose to sell this property. And you'll obviously have those income tax implications. That's like the full way of going about it, but then my mind always jumps to, well, how can we creatively get around this?
Oh, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. I've got a couple of questions for you that we could dig into. Before we do, though, I want to just touch on, we went through some risks there, but I want to touch on that example with that mathematical equation, which is gnarly.
Sounds gnarly, but on paper it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. If you maybe we'll just chuck that in the show notes as well, so people can check it out. And do you have links and stuff too? Did you
just jump on the ATO website?
Yeah, just jump on the ATO website, guys, as well, and speak to your accountant. If you're investing, you just pay good money for a good accountant. They should be on top of this, and if they're not on top of it, they should research it for you. If they don't, then you need a new accountant.
You can find it anywhere. To be fair, just do a bit of a search. But there was a good example, and the example that I did pull was from a website called the umbrellaaccountants.com.au.
Cool.
And they do a really easy example, and that was based around that those figures. So once again, it's the capital gain multiplied by the years rented divided by the years owned. So you pretty much go, well, if you've own it for 10 years and you rent it for 5 years, 5 divided by 10, and then you multiply that out by that area. If it's 1/5 of the residence, then it's obviously 1 divided by 5 on that front, and then you get to that final figure. But then if you held it for over that 12 months, you can chuck in that capital gains tax exemption of 50% or discount.
Yes.
So yeah, a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. And then, so if you've got a figure, say for example, that figure comes like through the maths we use with a 500k property that you purchased, and then you add it on a granny flat, and it cost you 70k to build, and you did it over a 10-year period, and 5 years you lived in the main property by yourself before you built the granny flat, and say roughly you've got a 25 grand, capital gains tax to pay. For that granny flat, then you should add that in your feasibility to when you're going to build this. So say 70 grand plus your capital gains tax plus if you're going to use finance, maybe that 5.5 grand a year, or was it 4.5 grand a year. So add all that together in your feasibility to understand when will you be 100% ROI, like when will you pay off that. And just do it in your feasibility study, I think. And that makes me go, all right, cool. If my feasibility study doesn't work because I don't feel like I'm going to live in this property for that long, or I'm going to get my ROI back completely after a certain period that I'm hoping to, my thoughts go completely outside the box. Cool, I've got enough land to put a dwelling on. Is this where your head's going, Sam?
No, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
It could go a million ways. So
yeah.
I'm just waiting.
I've got enough land to put a dwelling on. Can I subdivide, and that's going to cost money because you need DA approval, and then you need to get your building approval, and then all that sort of stuff. And then it becomes, do I split this up and make it 2 properties, and then hold one in a trust, and then one in my primary place of residence, and that new dwelling and new property that you've split be in a trust or a different structure. Maybe it's in your personal name, but then you can also even just keep your main primary place of residency. What do you think?
Yeah. That's the opportunity you got to figure out. Like, it depends on your personal circumstances. Because
that would cost a lot more money, but it could help you a lot with the capital gain stuff.
Oh, well, you could also, because it's a principal place of residence, you've lived there, you can subdivide that land off and then sell it off. And because it was your principal place of residence, once again, there's no capital gains, so you can sell it. And then it's like, well, instead of putting $70,000 into a granny flat, why not put 100 grand maybe into doing a 2-lot subdivision?
Yeah.
But that's if you can actually do that subdivision
in the local area, based on the local government.
Yeah, on the zoning rulings.
Yeah.
I like why your brain's good. That's why definitely a strategy for people is to find those lots of land that can be subdivided, but you're kind of land banking where you buy that property. You see the houses on one side of the parcel. That's like the bread and butter. I love that stuff. Some people buy, I guess, those older 1950s that are on stilts, and they can actually pick them up and move them. That's a strategy. But some people actually they can't do the subdivision, so that rules that out.
Yeah,
they want the extra income.
Yeah,
and also with granny flats too, like there's multiple stages in your life where it actually suits. So you've got your double income, no kids, called DINKs.
Okay.
Yeah, there's all these acronyms in the world, DINKs.
I need to get a partner. No kids.
Yeah, Jared's single if anyone's thinking about it. But you just got to travel the world with him. Yeah, it's a good gig, man.
It is good. Yeah, jump on board, ladies.
Double income, no kids. You're actually making, or even single income, no kids. You're making good money. You want to do something with your money to increase that income. You might not have enough borrowing capacity to actually buy an investment property that suits your risk tolerance, say like 300 grand, 400 grand, whatever it is. Because if like looking at $300,000, you might not be willing to go to places like Gladstone or Geraldton in WA, as an example. Good growth location. Check them out if you're thinking about it.
Just email us, propertypals.au.
The other, and then it's like, well, you got this. You can get this funding. You can increase your cash flow. You know, you do the figures. You go through a little bit of pain to project manage and get it all sorted. But there's granny flat specific builders out there where you pretty much go, here's my parcel of land. Can you do it? They give you a quote, and then you go accept quote, and they can't build it. There's actually, I'm talking to Shaylee because she was sort of looking around that granny flat side of things, and people like the businesses were like, well, you know, we can do it for you. What are you willing to pay? And it's like on their website, it's like, well, this is the cost for it, and it was $70,000. And you know, 70 grand is not going to get you the most flashiest thing, but it's going to be, you know, you can rent it out basically. And these granny flat builders, because they're in such high demand, because there's like, this is a massive issue in society with lack of housing. They're like, well, what are you willing to pay? So it's like, whoa, your asking price is 70 grand, but that's the same as, it's kind of the same mentality as a house price.
Yeah, it is. It is really like, what sort of bells and whistles do you want on it as well? And then it's also like, yeah, it's a big story in itself.
Well, this full disclaimer, the $70,000. That's like a relocate. They call them relocatable homes because they can get around a lot of planning regulations
So
around that.
kind of like mini stilts.
Yeah, and like they can be on wheels, which you can transfer. And it was cool because like I was running it through with her, and she's like, well, we could actually take that to the next place, or if like a risk mitigation strategy, say they had to sell their principal place of residence,
That's really cool to think about.
they could go and take it to a lot of land, and they could just, it's like a caravan basically, but it's like
basically take granny everywhere you go.
Yeah, and so there's an option,
Yeah.
and then this is kind of like a sales pitch for grannies, but also it's pros and cons, really. Maybe that's the title, the pros and cons of the granny.
Yeah, it's going to be risk and rewards of granny flats.
I'll leave you on that one to do that, but the like different stages of your life. So double income, no kids, you can increase that income. Like in my stage of your life, like say you have kids, you can actually get nannies to live in that granny flat. Au pairs, like you can pay an au pair $200-300 a week cash, give them accommodation, give them food, and maybe give them a small car.
What?
Like to use.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah, and then
like
they look after your kids. They help you with the cleaning, help you like look after the house, and it costs you $200. You just got to house them, and then it's like, well, for say you put that 70 grand, what was it? The interest on that was $4.5 grand sort of repayments. You start sort of weighing that up and going, well, how much are you spending on cleaners? How much are you spending on like
daycare,
things
like that? Yeah.
What's your time worth driving your kids to school and back?
Yeah.
Like
time, and also how much it costs you in expenses. Full feasibility studies need to be done when you're investing, guys.
yeah. Well, just run your Excel spreadsheets or however you want to do it. But I guess I'm walking through the different stages of life where you have that nanny as an example, which uses the granny flat, and then your kids grow up. Your kids get to teenage age. They want that sort of like independence of their own area.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're running a business and you want to sort of like a
separate office out there.
Separate office.
Yeah.
You know, the teenagers become young adults. They're still living at home, but you can say, look, this is your property. Look after it and just live in it. Don't have to pay rent. Or if you're like me, you start charging them rent. And then there's you know the older people that you know they might actually have a carer that could live in it later in life and like still live in that. I know my parents get to the stage where they love their home. It's like nice 5-bedroom property with a pool, but there's the maintenance side of it.
Yeah, whereas my parents sold the family home.
Yeah,
so don't have that maintenance. But I think it's also cool, like if you've got kids and you're like, all right, let's chuck grandma, or if it's just like one of your parents, grandma, or maybe both, put them in a granny flat, and then you've got like, hey, mum, I've got to go out for whatever, and then they're there on the property, with the kids, and that's pretty attractive. Like to raise I talk I talk to a lot of people that are having children at the moment and how to raise children.
Mid-30s, that's what happens.
Yeah, exactly, and it's fascinating. Raising a family with. Yeah, it's interesting they do that. Sorry, we're just looking at the video. If you put your thumb up on the video, it comes up with a little bubble. Oh, we've got fireworks too.
What?
Yeah, check out the video, guys, on YouTube. It's a little plug there. But raising a family,
Cool.
raising a family with, raising your family with your family and having a tribe is pretty attractive. I'm coming back to like alternatives and scenarios around granny flats. When you said you can build a granny flat and it could be on mini stilts and you can relocate it and it could be on wheels, like you could buy a caravan and chuck a au pair in there, put an au pair in there. You could also a fancy thing that people might be doing on Airbnb is like get a really cool swanky caravan with like a nice awning and a picnic rug and a table, whatnot. You can Airbnb that thing out.
Or you
Maybe.
can, there's like the storage containers.
Yeah, storage containers. You did a mini home on it. That would be so much easier to put on a truck, flatbed truck.
And they have wheels on it, but what you do is actually just build a deck around the wheels.
Yeah. Just remove the deck when you.
And then and it looks like it's just a legit little mini home, and you're still relocatable. It's on wheels and everything. It's just and you can put a little fence around it. This is getting deeper into so investors that we buy properties for. That have they're looking for like a granny flat play, and it's a strategy, which is there's definitely pros and cons. It's just that just because you can build a granny flat on a property, I'd still question to go, well, just make sure it's not detracting from the main residence.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little tip and trick, and like the easiest way around that.
What do you mean by detracting?
So
the main residence?
If you've got a nice house and then you're putting a side road down the back of the house and then removing the backyard, so that nice house, the main residence, is actually, it detracts its value because now you've got a car and other people living behind you, so it's a bit more high density. It doesn't detract it too much, but if you do it properly with fences and everything, it's hard to really know. It's kind of just like a neighbour.
Yeah.
It depends on the area you're in. If the area you're in is not the most like built out location, and you're the only one with a neighbour 5 meters from you, it can detract it. Mm-hmm. What I like to sort of focus for granny flats is corner blocks, because you've got that separate access point.
Yeah,
which is important.
Absolutely.
And then it's just the whole idea is to sort of make the granny flat look like it's not a granny flat, and that it doesn't hinder the main residence. When I was valuing property, people would be doing those granny flats at the back of the property, and you'd literally have to walk past the main residence. You're looking through their windows, and even when you're building these granny flats, sometimes you need, if a car's going down there, council might require you to have a certain grade of glazing or glassing to get that approval through, just in the event that if something flicks out and smashes a window. Look into that with your town planner as well, or your granny flat builder. They'll be able to give you more information. But once again, I'm here to give you questions to be asking to these people, because you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, you don't. And it's a fascinating one to think about. Like I thought about, and it's not even a granny flat, but when I bought my WA property, like you could add value to this if you put a shed in it, and you probably increase your rent. And I did a feasibility on the shed on how much it would cost to put like a slab down and then put a shed on, and it just wasn't going to be worth it for how long I thought I was going to rent the property out with what extra rent I would have got for it. So at times for you guys, sometimes it's going to be worth a granny flat, sometimes it's not. What's the overall sort of conclusion for Shaylee? Is she going to?
I'm still thinking about it. I just pointed to once again, as always, talk to your accountant. But there's definitely that capital gains tax side of things. Mm. But if you're going in a different route, student accommodation can be an exemption for granny flats. So you can say this is going to the juicy bits. rent it out to a student. The commentary around that is that the students are only paying the cost to run the property, so electricity, water. I'd like to know if they can pay the interest on it as well. Like, is that, like those...
Well, I mean, it depends on how you set up the agreement with the student. Maybe there's, maybe the market rent is $300 and it costs $150 to run the property. They pay you $150 on the books, and then, $150
doing tasks around the house.
Yeah.
Like doing
Yeah.
lawns.
Yeah.
So that's the, like, thinking outside the box and going, well, how can this work for you? But I guess the whole thing is also just making sure that you're covered from an insurance event, because I know people don't think things don't happen, but they do. And, it can send you bankrupt if you, like, say someone, breaks their neck and then they are paraplegic and no insurance company covers you. That person, they're financially ruined as well, because they don't have that ability to, say, earn that income. They're within their rights to go and take you for a couple $100,000. So just keep that in the back of your head.
All great investors don't buy on opportunity alone. They buy based on understanding the risks and seeing if they're comfortable with those risks before they go and invest.
Yeah, that's pretty much like the main points I wanted to try and help people understand.
I think we crushed it, to be honest. I think it was a really good pod.
Informative, but timely, because a lot of people are thinking about that, and it's a great way to do it. Just understand that there's costs involved. Like, you can't, in anything with the government, they're always going to have their hand out, right? Like, that's the way it is. We do live in one of the best places in the world, so at least we can have solace in the fact that our money does do something.
It does go
in the community.
Decent infrastructure for sure.
But there's the pros and cons. If you were, like, in my mind, I was like sort of running it through my head. I'm like, well, you'd want to understand if you're definitely going to go the granny flat path. Well, maybe not building the biggest granny flat possible, because that's going to increase that capital gains tax component.
The dwelling size or the internal space.
And from a renting perspective, you're going to get a higher rent rate for the cost on, like, say, a 1-bedroom as opposed to a 2-bedroom initially. So it might be $300 for a 1-bedroom, $400 for a 2-bedroom. Just depends on your market, right? But then if you get that bigger, say it's 100 square meters, and your main dwelling is 200, then it's no longer 1/5; it's now 1/3. So it's like, well, that on $500,000, it starts to go from $25,000 to $75,000. So it's like, well, that's a bit of a game changer too. So just run the figures, understand your situation, and as always, propertypals.au/coaching.
Yep.
Or hit us up on email, hello@propertypals.au, ask some questions or leave some comments below, and we're here to answer all the fun questions, and hopefully this gives you some insight into I guess the world of granny flats.
See ya.
Thumbs up. There's a little, hey, that's cool.
See you guys.
See you next one.